All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us with our Getting Started with Sigma Estimates webinar today. I'm Nick King, Product Marketing Officer at Moderna, and Michiel Woodendaal, who will be your host today, is the Technical Manager and Product Specialist. He is also our guru with Sigma. So just quickly, with the agenda, we'll be going through the introductions, which we've just done now, and then I'll tell you a little bit about Moderna and what we do, and then Michiel will touch briefly on Sigma, and then from there go into getting started. We'll also have a Q&A session right at the end, but please feel free also, if you have any questions in between, please pop them in the chat or in the Q&A section, and if we don't cover them right away, we will definitely cover them at the end. Okay, so briefly about Moderna, to sum us up, we are breaking barriers from traditional workflows to digital workflow, where we take you from 2D to 5D. That's summing Moderna up in a nutshell. We've been around for over 15 years, and we are the experts in architecture, engineering, and construction industries. So if you'd also like to know more about us, please also feel free to visit our website or drop myself or Michiel an email. So up next is Sigma, and Michiel will chat briefly about what Sigma Estimates is, and then from there, get you started. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session. So a little bit about Sigma. So this is a company, a Danish company that basically they started the development of Sigma quite a while ago. And it's really been a development of a software that's really geared to estimating in a more smarter way, better way, intuitive way. Ultimately, the development of the tool is behind their philosophy, which is really to get a flexible, fast, and accurate system that provides transparency. I've really enjoyed the software, learning through, going through the motions of understanding it better. And it's been really, kind of from my point of view, a really time saver and a lot of estimating processes or QSing processes. So I'm going to a little bit into this. So it's really building a quantity model that's resilient and doesn't really kind of is prone for errors. So just note, like Nick mentioned, you guys can answer questions throughout the webinar, pop it in the chat or in the Q&A session, and Nick will pick it up as and when needed to kind of address those items. So going into Sigma Estimates. So this is kind of your home screen, and it's really the base place where you will start off with. You've got some standard sample files at the top, some templates in the middle here, and then basically some standard templates at the bottom, and you can have your own company templates provided. Now, going into the platform itself. Now, my first feeling when I looked at Sigma Estimates, it felt a lot like Excel and Word and Outlook. And if you just kind of look at the items here, you got your top ribbon, you got your work breakdown structure on the left-hand side, and basically your rows and columns in the middle. Now, the real power behind it is when you start adding information into your contents page. So just starting off quite quickly, we can all add maybe something like walls, we can add floors, and as you see, we can really type it out as we need to. We can maybe start off and say, rather, we should have started with the substructure and, build our items. Now, as we type information in our columns, we saw the rows were extending and also our work breakdown structure on the side. Now, this is really how you want to see your estimations building up. Now, I normally say, if you had to compare this to Excel, each of these are equivalent to a tab in Excel. And that is how most people have adopted it, is to kind of find that resemblance. Now, at any point, I can go deeper. I don't have to stay at this level. So if I go into my walls component, I go a level down. So basically being on my walls, I can here type in a double brick wall. Maybe we have a concrete wall, single brick wall, whatever the case. I can continuously type this information out. Now, just looking at the codes on the side here or the columns, we've got standard columns starting to appear now. For instance, we have a category. Now, this is typically how to assign elements. So if I just typed in an M, I can get a list of items. So I can say my bricks needs to be categorized as materials. and we can just add those items in, or like Excel, you can just drag them down and it will copy them in place. Very much the same feel. Next is kind of how we measure them. So, and naturally, I might say my walls I'm going to measure as a linear meter. So it's just a meter measurement. My concrete wall, I actually want to maybe measure as a volume, and so on and so forth. So this is really customizable. I just have a few standard items in here, and actually you will build something more standard for your company to really pull that information across. Then we've got a quantity table, and this is really to type in how much wall are we measuring. So I might measure 5 meters of wall, and the unit cost per meter might be, let's say, 200 or 350 Rand. And automatically, through Sigma's method of applying information, it'll take your quantity and your unit cost and give you a total cost at the end of the day. So if anything had to change, 8.5, our values will adapt to those measurements quite quickly and intuitively. But that's not all. I'm just removing my costs. I can also deep dive into a double brick wall, and I can add information below that. And this might be, my bricks. There might be some brick force. There might even be labor if you want to calculate how much your labor will cost. Now, typically your category will take the higher level. So if I remove this, I go back down, I can now say this is a materials, and maybe this should be labor, and we can add those items in. Again, we can measure, so we can say for 1 square meter of 1 linear meter of wall, what would be the bricks? And let's say it will be a quantity of 10 bricks. Our brick force will be maybe in that sense situation 1, and our labor would be 0.5, half an hour for that kind of item. So I just need to add my measurements in here, meter, and that will be an each or an hour rate, however you want to measure those items. And again, I can add those unit costs. So I can say bricks is maybe 150 Rand, brick force is 25 Rand, and my labor is 750 Rand per half an hour, whatever the case might be. I get a total cost at the end, and you can see it at the top ribbon. And if I go one level back again, I can now see my cost, my unit cost has been now adapted to whatever's below that. So again, anything that's below my double brick will be captured and put together here. So now it will take my total cost times it by the quantity of this wall, and it'll give me a total cost of my project. And you can actually just build around this whole process quite easily without having to, think too much about it. Same with a concrete wall, we can go in and say concrete, labor, there might be some delivery costs, whatever the case might be. And again, you can complete this information. You can even go a little bit deeper in here. So on the concrete, we might have our sand, cement, water, and we can build up those ratios all the way back down. So what I really want to convey here is the composition, or what we refer to as recipes, really brings in the value of making your values a lot smarter. So at the end of the day, if I've got my costs on all my elements, it'll be accumulation of whatever the breakdown is. And then based on the quantities I would need for a project, the volume of concrete walls or slabs, whatever the case might be, that is the only items I need to put in, which will then multiply by the unit cost. That is basically a breakdown from my lower levels. Now, this is also a lot of times, process. If you have to do this on a continuous basis, you've got multiple projects to do it on, you can't really spend time adding and adapting and loading and retyping all of this information. We do want to start off on a good foot, or at least use information that we've created in the past. Now, this is one of Sigma's really powerful items, because it's not a spreadsheet-based software. As in like Excel, you don't do really VLOOKUPs and reference a lot of information or different tables or other spreadsheets. You really build it around libraries. So I'm just going to open up one of my library sample files here. And this is a previous project. A library could be a previous project, could be of a standard, it could be a supplier library. So you might purchase your items from builders or wherever, and you can have that standard list of items in there. So again, if I look at my walls, I've got a brick wall here. If I go in there, I've got a general one and a feature one, and there's some costs already involved. And if I go deep down, I can see there's a brickwork, bricklayer, and the measurements, etc. So again, we see all this information. So instead of, I'm just going to use my single brick here, instead of having to type in the quantities now at the bottom, what I could do is really just grab this information. So I can just go and say these two items, and I can just pull it into my project. So if I had to go now, and you can see my costs, so I can quite easily add values to how much that is. And there we go, we've updated. This is really a quick way of reusing data from a previous project, like I mentioned, a standard library that's within your firm, and just update your information on the project that's coming. Now, there is way more features and functionalities within Out-User libraries. And one of my favorites that I really enjoy, and I always set up my projects that way, is, for instance, I've got a floor here. Let's use the concrete floors, B2. So I might get concrete floors, and I'm going to use the number value and say B2 as my code. We can see my list update on the side, and I have concrete floors, but I haven't completed anything else in my spreadsheet. So what I want to do is I want to maybe add quantity 1 and add some values in here so we can see it actually works. So just something like that. So if I see here my library's got now values, and now what I can do is on my project, if I've set up a project with correct codes and values and things like that, I can say update from library, and ultimately I can say what library am I working with. So I want to look at this library, and I want to make sure that my numbers, so this column of numbers and my project columns of numbers, should be looking for the same information. And if I just say update, it will basically go through my entire project and match up the information from my library with the information within my estimation. And as you can see, it updated the unit cost in there. And now if I just type in what the quantities are for the floors, so 355 square meters, again, we get a total. And that's how easy it is really to start using libraries, existing content, existing data with new projects without having to requote or remeasure or anything like that. At any point, you can come back, readjust the values, and that information will update. One of the other functionalities is that you might need to adjust your values. Now, I always use this example, so naturally, I'm pretty much aware we don't measure walls in a linear meter. We need to work out the square meter of that. So we know the linear meter is 35. So I can say 35 times, and what's the height of my wall? 2.55. And that'll automatically give me a quantity of square meter. And if I hover over it, I can see the formula. And again, that'll adjust all my values along the way. So the same with my double brick wall. So it's 8.5 times 2.55. And there we go, our cost updated based on that information. So that really gives you the flexibility of adding formulas, calculating values, depending on what information you have at hand. And you might be doing manual measurements on the side, or you might have a 3D model and you have the input of square meters. Whatever the case might be, Sigma does help you get there quite quicker without having to rework that information. Again, just kind of because I like this process. If I had to look at my walls, I've got an A1, sorry, let's go level down. So on the brick walls, I've got A1.1. And if I go here, A1.1, and again, if I update from library, it will update that item. Again, as quick as that, it will use my quantity and it will update all the items below this brick wall. Quite a quick way of managing your items. Now, one thing you will notice as I've gone around and adding items, cost, labor, whatever the case might be, we can have a little bit of a calculation at the top here. So we can see wherever I've added a material, it's highlighted as such. My total cost of my project, if I go to different levels, it'll filter that information. So at my estimate level, so that's a holistic view of the whole project, I can see that 228, and I can see the same value there. And the same with materials will be sub elements or categories that it's highlighted. So you always get this kind of feel of what's happening on your project. Is it equipment? Is it materials, labor, hours, whatever the case might be. It's always been captured and managed. Now, going into our next tab, the summary, this will just really bring across that information into a table and give you more of a project overview of what's happening and how you can see that information. So I can see my walls, I can see my concrete floors, what's in there. And again, I can break it down and can see all that items. Now, typically the summary page is just a high level item to give you an idea of what is happening on your project. Do you need to include VAT or not? And all of those items can be managed on the project. Now, for this template, I did initially deactivate VAT, so I can say we've got a 15% VAT. Say okay, and now I've got my VAT inclusive, so I get VAT exclusive, VAT calculated, and my total VAT at the end of the day. This is a quick way of just sending out an invoice to or a bill of materials to a client, bill of quantities, whatever the case might be for your tendering job, to just quickly tell them this is what's the process or the cost of the project. If you feel like you need to add more items in here that you haven't captured within Sigma Estimates, you can always export this out to Excel or even to Word or even a CSV file, which is nice because you might have your own company templates of how this document should look and things like that. You can export it out. Now, you don't have to send it out to Excel or Word or whatever the case might be. You do have some reports within the platform. Now, the reports is standardized, but is also fully customizable. So, for instance, I might need to do a tender out document. So I can say, look at my tender with quantities. It'll give me a few command prompts. I can add watermarks, etc. And it'll ask me maybe for some information. Do I have any agreement, introductions? Is there any kind of description, headers, or things like that? And ultimately can say continue. And that will generate a report for me based on that information. And if I scroll down, I can see a summarized version of it. And there I can now get a more detailed version of what's happening on my walls, on my floors, and things like that. Now, again, there are a variety of templates, of reporting templates that comes with the platform that you can pull out of that information. Looking into our resources tab, this will also give us a nice breakdown by the category types. So, I mean, you guys can see here, I've placed one of my walls under a material tab and another one under materials. So it's giving me a quite significant split. So you can see there is some case sensitivity to this, but at the end of the day, it's really a platform around how you want to see your information and view them. Then the last tab I do like to talk about is the key figures, because this ultimately does bring a high level information of the project. And if you really want to deep dive or you really want to understand, just like as a business opportunity to clients, this is where you will predict the cost of your products. So again, we can see our materials cost, the percentage of relative price. If you want to add VAT in here for anyone to understand, we can add those items. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this is really the big picture you want to highlight. And again, you can export this report as a key figures, which will be produced then that you can send off to the client, to the project team, to the business managers, whatever the case might be. It's for them to just get a quick understanding of what's currently happening on the project. Yeah, so ultimately this is a quick getting started guide into Sigma estimates. It's really a smart, intuitive way, a great tool to replace Excel workflows. And I do recommend have a look at it, go download a trial version, contact us. We're happy to help you guys navigate the initial steps of the platform. Now I'm just going to go into the little bit of Q&A. So there's a few frequent questions that we normally get. Can Sigma integrate with Revit? Yes, it's got a dynamic link of taking your geometry out of Revit into Sigma estimates. You can also marry that app with the DWFX or IFC file formats. Can Sigma integrate with other platforms? As you've seen, you have the access of Excel, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Projects. But Sigma also has an open API that allows for custom integration. So you can really build your own tools around it or get someone to build it for you. Sigma, as the third question, is not just a tool for QSs or estimators. We've seen the adoption around general contractors, subcontractors, really to make their workflows better. Like I mentioned, it's a replacement of Excel or extended tool above Excel to really automate more of your processing. The last item, Sigma is a Sigma spreadsheet-based application. And really, no, it's a database, it's a library component. So it really uses all the information across projects that you can bring in, use them where you need to. So quite easy to reuse data along the way. I don't know if there's any other questions. Nick, anything from your side that you picked up?
Yeah, I have a few questions here, Michiel. Thanks. Okay, the first one is, can Sigma estimates be used as a standalone?
Yes, so Sigma Estimates is a fully standalone application. It gets installed on your machine. You don't have to use a cloud. It's not a cloud application, so it's really on your machine full time. So if the internet's down, you can carry on working.
Awesome, thanks, Michiel. And then, okay, I have a few more questions here. The next one is, how easy is it to import or export data to and from Sigma Estimates?
Well, that's a good question. So it's, as you see, like exporting out of Sigma Estimates, it's literally a click of a button and the data is generated into Excel. The same approach is vice versa, where you can take information within Excel and you can bring it into Sigma through kind of like a copy paste method. So it's really intuitive in bringing, especially between Excel and Sigma, there's really intuitive ways of bridging those two platforms.
Okay, awesome. Now that makes sense. Thanks. Okay, next question. What kind of skills are needed to operate Sigma Estimates or customizing the reports?
So 2 questions here. So the type of skills you need to really use Sigma Estimates is really nothing special. If you can operate Excel on a basic level, you will be quite comfortable within Sigma Estimates. Yes, it's a new interface, so there's always a little bit of change that needs to happen, but you don't need to have a high skill level in software and things like that. In customizing the reports, that is a little bit more high level technical skills. And for lack of better terminology, a little bit of knowledge of, I don't want to say programming, but understanding a little bit of jargon of how to edit different databases and things like that to ultimately bring that customization to the forefront.
All right, cool. No, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks. Okay, next question. Can Sigma Estimates be used offline?
Yes, like I mentioned before, it's on your machine, so you don't need an internet connection. At most is once in a while, Sigma does require just a connection to the internet to make sure that you've still got a valid license. But that's the only internet connection you need to operate.
Okay, great, thanks. And then it looks like our last question here is Sigma Estimates scalable?
Yeah, so what's nice about it is if you start off small, 1-2 licenses, 1 or 2 people in the firm learning it, using it, it's quite easy to start, expanding that to more personnel within the firm. There's no barriers between, different licensing models and things like that. It's really an easy way of, once they get a license, they access the same files and they can carry on working.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Michiel. Again, I think that's it from the question side. Yeah, great. I see. I don't know if you want to run through these frequently asked questions, but I'm sure everybody saw those. Yeah, there's no more questions. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. And thank you, Michiel, once again, for a very informative webinar. This is being recorded, so I will send it to everybody as well to share with your colleagues. We hope you have a great afternoon. Thanks again, Michiel.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time. Have a good day.
Yeah, so thanks, guys.